The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications, connecting Virginians to their government. We're very pleased to have two members of the Virginia Senate and one member of the House of Delegates here with us today. Senator Mamie Locke, good to see you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Senator Louise Lucas, finally, it's good to see you again after several years.
Oh, it is an absolute pleasure for me to be here again.
Delegate Steve Heretick, welcome to the General Assembly, sir.
Thank you, Woody. It's great to be here. It's a tremendous privilege.
As a freshman member, I understand you attended a signature event this past Saturday with your colleagues in Williamsburg. What was that all about?
Absolutely. Since the 1930s, every 4 years, the General Assembly sits in the old colonial capital at Williamsburg, partially to remind us of the traditions of Virginia leadership and Virginia government. In 3 years, Woody, Virginia will be 400 years of elected leadership, the oldest continuously serving legislative body in the Western Hemisphere. And Colonial Williamsburg hosts us every 4 years to come back and remind us of those traditions. And I can tell you, as not only a history buff, but as a William and Mary grad, it was a tremendous privilege for me to be able to sit in the House of Burgesses and to be reminded of the very proud traditions we have in Virginia of our leadership.
And Senator Lucas, I take it that this occurs once every 4 years, that you have an opportunity to sit in that seat of history. Talk to us about some of the takeaways that you have from
Well,
that.
you know, the ceremony itself is always wonderful. Just to hear the speakers and all of the insights that they bring to us, both from the past and as we go forward. But the thing that was most impressive to me this weekend is the fact that we had the opportunity to worship at First Baptist Church in Williamsburg, and they have restored the bell of freedom. And I was there to be able to witness the ringing of that bell. It was absolutely wonderful.
Wonderful, that's great. And Senator Locke, tell us your impressions of that event.
I was just happy to hear the debate between Madison and Patrick Henry, to hear the debate over the Constitution, and to hear Patrick Henry basically say that you didn't go to write a Constitution, you were just there to redo the Articles of Confederation, and here you come back with this whole new government that you weren't meant to do, and you know, Patrick and Madison basically explaining why it was necessary to write a Constitution to create this new government. So that was just interesting to hear this recreation of that debate.
And you've had some students from time to time at the General Assembly, and I know you're heavily steeped in political science, so that experience helps you inform your students as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I teach political science, and I had a group of students here on Monday going around and lobbying their legislators. I told them, you don't have to lobby me, I lobby you.
Delegate Heretick, as a freshman, how has the transition been from local government to the General Assembly?
Well, it's very exciting. I mean, from local government perspective, we deal with, you know, the nuts and bolts issues of everyday life. I mean, from everything from trash collection to patching potholes in the streets to hiring city managers. Here, it's a very different focus. You know, we see things more at the 30,000-foot view, and our job here is to support local governments and to try to make their jobs certainly faster, better, and cheaper. I will tell you that as a freshman, the learning curve is significant. They've had a number of orientation sessions for us. There are a lot of new rules, a lot of new procedures to learn, and here you start as a freshman from square one. I mean, obviously there's no seniority, at least at my level, and you know, it's a very steep learning curve. It's been exciting.
Senator Lucas, you are dressed in sartorial splendor, as you usually are, but I understand this garb has some particular significance.
It definitely does have some particular interest today, in that, as you know, the federal government has granted Pamunkey their recognition. And for years, there have been several efforts to try to keep Pamunkey from getting the recognition because there was a desire to try to stop them from building a casino. Well, MGM Grand had partnered with a group out of California to try to stop Pamunkey. Well, yesterday the decision came down, and they've been granted recognition, so they'll be able to go forward with a casino now. And just coincidentally, I have a casino bill that's still alive that I'm going to be presenting this afternoon.
Well, talk to us about some of the details regarding your legislation.
Yeah, well, originally when I decided I was going to introduce the casino bills, I had 3 different bills and it went to Senator Locke's subcommittee. And so Senate Bill 32, of course, they dispensed with that one fairly quickly because that was the one that would have allowed all of the revenues to stay in the city of Portsmouth for our transportation issues in particular. And so that bill was PBI, as was Senate Bill 34.
Passed over indefinitely?
Passed by indefinitely. But Senate Bill 33 is still alive, and what it does, it creates a commission to oversee the casino operation once we get one constructed in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I know some people probably saying, well, it's a little bit premature for that, but I think in light of the decision that grants Pamunkey their recognition, that they're going to be going forward with that casino. So I think we need to get ahead of that curve and get at least a commission in place. That's my take on it. But the bill that I negotiated this week that I'm really proud of is the city of Portsmouth had asked for $9 million in the budget to restore the Paradise Creek Bridge. And what we found is because it leads up to the gate of the federal government, in particular the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, we were able to find a way to get that money back on the Senate Finance Committee's docket, and I feel fairly certain at this point that I'm going to get that $9 million for Paradise Creek for restoration of that bridge for the city of Portsmouth. And of course, I have a lot of other initiatives, but I'll allow my colleagues to say something. I'll take all the full time. You know that, Woody. So
Absolutely, absolutely. It's enjoyable. Senator Locke, talk to us a little bit about the kinds of technologies that exist. For example, at Hampton University, I just learned that there's a proton therapy institute there.
Yes, it's a separate freestanding center, not on the university's campus, but in one of the technology centers in the city of Hampton. And what it does is it treats cancer through the use of this new technology of proton therapy, which allows the patient to undergo this therapy and then be able to go about his or her business the same day. So the university has been certainly lobbying the state for revenues for this center, and has gotten some revenues, still lobbying for additional revenues for that center because it is been noted to be a very successful therapy for cancer patients, particularly for prostate cancers and also for ocular cancers. So we're hopeful that some additional revenues will be forthcoming for that center.
And I understand it's only one of a handful in the nation now.
As I understand it, Woody, it's about 1 of 6 in the nation, and the technology is cutting edge in the world. The proton radiation therapy module does not involve surgery. So it's essentially like taking an X-ray, and patients recover much more quickly. The cure rate is significant. So for patients who qualify for that form of therapy, it is a miracle. It is an amazing blessing. And by the way, you know, the technology that goes in it is not only a driver for Hampton University, it's an economic driver for the entire region. Dr. Harvey, the president of Hampton University, was brilliant when he decided to locate that in Hampton Roads.
We've got economic problems throughout the Commonwealth. Hampton Roads is no exception. I just saw a piece that said about 700 more people are being laid off at the shipyards now.
that's correct. That is correct. And so, and along those lines, we're working as smart as we know how to try to create some mechanism where we can attract more business, more economic development to the region, and in particular, since we all do represent Portsmouth in some parts, Senator Locke also has precincts in Portsmouth, we work collaborative on trying to do all that we can as a legislative group representing Portsmouth to try to bring funds into the city. In fact, I'm negotiating with the folks over at the South Norfolk Bridge, over the Jordan Bridge, to try to get money into Portsmouth now, right now, as it stands right now. I'm not sure that I'm going to get the $2 million up front that the city of Portsmouth needs, but I'm working on trying to get that in some form. But I'm trying to also negotiate to get an increase in the amount of money that Portsmouth will be receiving per vehicle going across the Jordan Bridge, and have it so that it's indexed, so that it would index to inflation rather than going down based on depreciation.
So this whole concept of Go Virginia that's been talked about this year is nothing new, but apparently there's some funding to encourage people to get together on a regional level for economic development.
Exactly, and the way that would happen is through workforce development and training to try to make sure that we have a trained workforce. That's what we need more than anything else.
Absolutely.
So this will provide the kind of I could say climate, and we don't like to use the old anti-poverty term anymore because it's not sexy. So we use this Go Virginia, and we use the other vehicles that are available to us now to try to make sure that we do that.
Talk to us about what role our community colleges play in terms of workforce development.
I mean, they're the center for workforce development programs, and they're central to helping to train the needed workforce for the future. So like Thomas Nelson Community College, J. Sargent Reynolds, they're all the center for the workforce development occupations, being able to develop that workforce, train that workforce, and be able to get that workforce ready for those future occupations that are out there.
So all of our students, high school grads, don't need to go to college, don't want to go to college, but certainly they want to achieve the American dream, if you will, and earn a decent salary. The community colleges present a great opportunity for them.
Really, they're flexible in terms of the program offerings. They are affordable. Most students who go to a community college don't walk away with a huge student loan debt, and it provides immediate work skills. I know that, you know, a TCC, which has campuses all over Hampton Roads, has a beautiful new campus in Portsmouth, has, among other things, welding, truck driving. I mean, the type of skills, you know, for jobs that you can get today, you know, and a lot more flexibility in their program offerings than, say, a four-year university. My brother, for example, I mean, I'm a product of William and Mary. My brother is a master machinist, and I can tell you that his first, you know, my first 5 years of practicing law, I didn't make nearly as much as he did as a machinist. And by the way, he never lets me forget that fact. So, I mean, I think that that's a tremendous resource for, you know, our rising high school students. And by the way, there are programs that allow high school seniors to already, as seniors, to go and take community college courses, which give them credits to four-year universities, but more than that, tries to give them a jump start on employability in the workforce.
And of course, I believe you were the first female welder.
I was the first. I did.
Right here.
I was a
That's
welder
right.
at the shipyard, and I graduated from the apprenticeship program as a shipfitter. And I can say to you, all of this community wealth building is more than worth all that we can do collectively to try to make it happen. Because
Amen.
I can tell you, I made a whole lot more money as a welder and as a shipfitter than I do as a senator.
Now, we also have, though, the opportunity for those students who go to a community college to continue their education on to one of our institutions of higher learning, do we not?
Right.
That's exactly correct.
There are a number of 2+2 programs,
Yes.
and it's quite conceivable that a student can go from high school to the community college onto a four-year institution and even
Correct.
onto doctoral, master's and doctoral programs,
correct.
all at the same setting.
So is there still what about financial assistance for those students who want to matriculate to a higher institution?
I mean, we're working very hard on financial aid programs to try to cut down the cost of those high loan debts, trying to try to work on tuition costs so the students can graduate with minimal debt, as well as try to get students out in 4 years.
And
Now,
that's a
go
major
ahead.
concern, which is driving politics at the national level. Because all of these young people, if you've listened to these different debates all across the country, they're following the candidates who are looking out for them and their future in terms of helping them to get college educated so that they can be self-sufficient and have a lifestyle, hopefully, that's better than the ones that we had.
And of course, here in the Commonwealth, I think the public institutions have to balance the need to continually attract out-of-state students who help subsidize the students in residence here.
Right.
And that's a very delicate balance. How do we maintain that?
Well, I think, Woody, one of the big failings that we've seen in recent history is that the Assembly has not properly supported our four-year institutions. Out of the top five public universities in America, three of the top five are in Virginia. And I think that's an amazing statement to the investment that Commonwealth has made in its four-year programs. Unfortunately, just as you say, we're having to attract more out-of-state students who pay much higher tuition to support these institutions. You know, I'm a product of William and Mary. I couldn't have afforded to go to William and Mary coming from my family background today. I think I want to make those educational opportunities as affordable to Virginia students as I can to hand on that legacy. I think it's a priority that we need to fund.
Absolutely.
Now, there have been a number of high media issues, so to speak, over in the Senate recently. There was a debate yesterday over a constitutional amendment in terms of right to work. What were the pros and cons of that debate?
Well, I can tell you for one thing, I don't know the reason why there was even a necessity to introduce the constitutional amendment because I mean, everything
in
was
statute.
everything is in the statute, and everything's working fine as it is. But I can tell you, you've got some of the new breed of people who are getting elected to the General Assembly. They just as soon turn back the hands of time to the 18th century, and so a lot of us were just curious because there's no way of stopping it now because the governor can't veto a constitutional amendment.
And it's
you-
public policy already. So, and there has not been any bill introduced in the over 40 years that right to work has been a part of policy in this state to overturn right to work.
That's correct.
So there is no need for this to be in the Constitution. And the Constitution of Virginia is quickly becoming, the statute of Virginia. So it's no longer the sacred law that it should be.
That's
It's no
correct.
longer sacred.
That's correct.
It's simply becoming this book that individuals are using to become public policy embedded in it. So, so it's becoming this thing for individuals who want to institutionalize their policy initiatives. So it's simply every year we are being confronted with constitutional
More
amendment
constitutional
after constitutional amendment being put out there that's just public policy.
And
So
and it
go
really
ahead.
means nothing. All it's doing is pandering to the base of the folks who are introducing these bills. Because essentially, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't accomplish anything.
Right.
It's just sending a message to their base.
So we're morphing the Constitution into the Code of Virginia, it sounds like.
Exactly.
That's exactly what we're doing. And remember, it was Virginia that brought the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, to the United States. These are bedrock freedoms that we protect. And when we start, putting things like right to work in the Constitution, I think we're really sort of losing the stability, the tradition that goes into a constitutional amendment. And as the senators correctly observed, this has been the law in our books since the 1940s.
Sure.
It's going to be the law in the books for anybody's foreseeable future. Why we have to go tinkering with the Constitution to enshrine this right when it's been solidly in statute for 70 years, I think is anybody's guess.
And never challenged.
And never challenged. Correct.
Correct.
I know you wanted to talk about some more mundane issues around
Freshmen
tolling.
always want to talk
Yeah,
about mundane
around tolling.
issues. About tolling.
Yeah,
Oh, and I have a tolling bill. Go
I'm
ahead.
sure you.
Woody is everybody I hope knows by now. The tolls on the downtown and midtown tunnel between Portsmouth and Norfolk has done a tremendous disservice to both communities. Delegate Matthew James, the senior member from Portsmouth, and I have the distinction of being the only two members of the House that have to pay tolls to get from one end of our district to the other. It's hurting Portsmouth desperately. I think it's going to be hurting Norfolk in the not too terribly distant future. And we've all introduced a number of bills to try to help identify ways to mitigate and reduce the damage that tolls is doing for our communities, and to try to create a strategy for the future how we can deal with that. I can tell you that with the advent of tolls in Northern Virginia, our colleagues to north of Fredericksburg are now paying a little bit more attention to where we are, because they've gone to school. They've learned the hard lessons that we have to live with in terms of the tolls we have to pay for the next, 55 years now.
That's correct.
I wish, as a freshman, they have a special way of dealing with our bills. So I hope that, going forward, we'll get a little bit more attention to the plight that, the toll contracts have placed on both Portsmouth and Norfolk. And I sincerely appreciate the support I've gotten from our senior members of the Senate and from Portsmouth to try to deal with some of those initiatives, because I can tell you it's hurting us. I think in the long term it's going to kill us financially. And I think that we really do have to go back to the drawing board on some of those contracts and some of those deals to try to make them a little bit more user-friendly for the people like me that have to go through these tunnels every day.
So this
Well,
is
I go back to the beginning of when P3 was first established.
public-private partnership.
That's I'm sorry, public-private partnership. we're accustomed to calling it P3 up here.
Yeah.
But the reason why I've gone back to that distance is because when P3 was introduced, there was no one in this legislature who voted for it, who thought that it would ever come to what Bob McDonnell did to the Commonwealth of Virginia,
Right.
specifically to the Hampton Roads area, in particular to Portsmouth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But what we've done and what my legislation does, it mirrors what Chris Jones has in the House.
Mm-hmm.
And it would prevent the situation that occurred at the Midtown and Downtown Tunnel in Portsmouth from ever happening again. There would never be another opportunity for any such project to go forward without input from the legislature. That is, we will not have any new construction that we will get told on before there's capacity. That makes no sense.
Right.
And many of us have been arguing that point for years. Ever since Bob McDonald went forward with this whole issue, we have been fighting it. I, in particular, have done several things. One was to get $100 million out of McDonald's budget to buy down the tolls for that first until 2014. Went back and had Governor Terry McAuliffe to help us to relieve the tolls on the Martin Luther King Expressway. And there were other initiatives that we've done to try to buy down the tolls. So if we're doing all this to buy down the tolls, why toll us in the first place
Correct.
for a capacity that we don't have?
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to get reversed now. And the way to get that started is through the bill that Chris Jones has in the House and the bill that I have in the Senate. And of course,
And mine was rolled into yours.
and Mamie's was rolled into, and there were 2 or 3 other bills that were rolled into this bill, the bill that I have. And that's to try to make sure that this kind of a situation never happens again. And that any tolling can only happen with input from the legislature.
Well, I certainly think that the people of Northern Virginia are hearing you, especially about the negative consequences of what occurred, because there's a huge debate about I-66 tolling inside the Beltway right now. And obviously, this has been a huge economic disincentive in your district. I take it.
Exactly, because it's especially impactful on Portsmouth.
Yes.
You know, because it's kind of locked that city in and at a disadvantage. And so, you know, and I hate to say this, but when I first heard about all of this, and I have a part of Portsmouth in my district, I said, okay, is it my part?
Right. I understand.
At the time it was.
That's being told, you know, and it wasn't. So, you know, and you know, and that's, you know, a disadvantage to individuals who have to work in Norfolk, you know, who have to go to school in Norfolk, you know, who have to travel back and forth between those 2 cities, and is having a, you know, disadvantage to individuals who can least afford it.
And you know, all of us come from local government. As you know, Senator Locke was the mayor of her city, and both Delegate Heretick and I have both served on the Portsmouth City Council. What compounds the issue for us is the fact that we're landlocked. We're in the 33 square miles. Over 50% of the property in Portsmouth is non-taxable.
50%.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And so now here we are in a city that's landlocked, and we have one of the highest real estate tax rates in all of Hampton Roads. And then we get hit with these exorbitant tolls. Yeah, we're pretty upset about this, and we're going to work like there's no tomorrow to try to get some of this stuff reversed.
And then through all of this construction, you close the Midtown Tunnel on the weekends.
Yes.
You know, 1 lane of the downtown tunnel, you know, which hurts businesses tremendously.
Well, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about one of your initiatives this year, which apparently didn't go very far. There was some funding for housing.
You know, I was very annoyed about that.
Oh, she was.
The Virginia Housing Commission did a study and had the numbers confirmed by Virginia Tech on money to go into the Virginia Housing Trust Fund. And right now, there was money that was done. There was money put into the trust fund, but it's been done piecemeal. So we were looking for a dedicated source of revenue that would come from the recordation tax on top of the money that was already going for transportation. So this would be anything in excess of what was going to the transportation lockbox. So, like I said, this was done through the Housing Commission, through a study that was done. It was vetted throughout the year by the commission. The commission unanimously voted, bipartisan vote, to move forward with having this as the source of revenue, so there would be a continuous source, so we wouldn't have to rely every year on a governor through his largesse, you know, putting money in for the trust fund. And generally there was never enough money for the needs for affordable housing. And in finance this morning, you know, it's like, well, we don't like this.
So what, other than we don't like this, was
You know,
were there any arguments presented against it?
You know, basically we don't like, you know, dedicated sources of revenue.
But that's what we need. We need dedicated, long-term, and sustainable sources of revenue to accomplish the mission. And why we can't get them to understand that is a total mystery for me. But we've been fighting this battle, and for me in particular, this is my 25th year. But I'll tell you what, we aren't tired. We're going to continue fighting.
Great. I want to take advantage of your experiences as members of local governing bodies to talk a little bit about the impact on the governor's proposal in the second year of his budget for teacher raises. Now, they are needed, but doesn't that have an impact on local government because there is a match that has to occur?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does. And I can tell you that, I've heard from a lot from teachers who are concerned. I mean, they're very happy the governor is putting a lot of new money into education. They're not happy that the governor is not putting money into teachers until the second year. I, for one, and I know Senator Lucas, when she was on Portsmouth City Council, we spent, education for us has always been a priority, and we try to fund education as fully as we possibly can. I think the problem comes with the sort of the unpredictability of the local match to the state budget, right. When that occurs, because remember, the state budget will pass very shortly before the localities have to enact their budgets. And I can tell you that a lot of the juggling that goes on at the local level happens very, very quickly after the state budget is passed. So it's a good thing, but not knowing yet exactly where that's going to come down does put some pressure on the local governments.
It really does, and especially since right now Portsmouth is working on its budget and is struggling, which is the reason why we're doing so many things now, trying to find all kinds of creative ways to try to get some money back to the locality so that they will be able to come up with a budget that everybody can live with.
Right.
We're trying to do that short of having something like a 17-cent tax increase on property, real
And
estate
that's the
tax.
last thing you need
That's
is for local governments to say we're going to raise your real estate tax.
Absolutely.
Talk to us for the remaining moments about the impact of the standard of learning reforms in your local
That's
school.
still ongoing. There's the Reform Commission that's still working on determining what to do with SOLs. There's an effort to try to continue to reduce the number of SOLs that the children have to take at all the levels where they have to take SOLs. I'm not sure the status of the legislation right now, but there's still efforts that are ongoing.
Well, look, it's been a pleasure as always. I'm so happy we could have the three of you here. Sorry we're running out of time, but Senator Mamie Locke, good to be here. Senator Louise Lucas, good for you to be here. And Delegate Steve Heretick, good to meet you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans. Mm-hmm.